we'll get there. We're going to talk some philosophy, but I really have a heavy heart today. And, this pandemic, I think the National Federation of the Blind, our family, you guys, all of us, we've stepped up and helped a lot of people and inspired a lot of people and taught a lot of people. And we've networked and we've found a lot of people, and the Federation's on fire. And we're all getting ready to register for the National Convention. And that is so huge. It's going to be a great time. However, we also know that this pandemic, or at least over this past few months, there's been just so much tragedy and loss and grief and suffering and pain and isolation and lonely, really stuff. And I don't want to start being a total downer, but we know we had incidents in Minneapolis this week and other cities. It just seems like it can be a hard time for people. And I even noticed last Saturday on our great Wild West variety show that some of the presentations, poems, just had a dark tinge to them. And I think that's natural. Art will express what people are thinking in our hearts. And so what I want to do today is just start remembering, contemplating, reflecting, praying, meditating. Let's just take a minute. If I can get everyone who's unmuted to sort of participate, and do that just for a moment. This bell, it's a great freedom bell, but it doesn't always ring very clearly. I don't know. Thank you all for that. Thank you for indulging me. I hope that was okay with folks, and I feel confident knowing our family that it is. Let me do a couple of quick announcements. I'll turn it to Jessica and Scott, and we'll get down to some discussion. In fact, in terms of the announcements, why not, Jess, you want to next week or anything?
Yes, actually, so next week we are only going to be having our Mountain Time calls on Wednesday and Friday. So you will be able to not only get our full announcement on Colorado Talk and on Facebook for the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado Facebook page, but you'll also be able to see it on the list of national calls that Stephanie Cascone sends out each week. On Thursday, we're encouraging everyone to attend the live presidential release, which will not be at 5 o'clock Mountain Time, but it will be at 6 o'clock Mountain Time. And so we want everybody to save their Zooming and hop on that call. We're going to have some exciting content for you next week. Just because we're going to be doing a little bit fewer calls doesn't mean they're not going to be as good. In fact, they're probably going to be better because we're going to have more time and energy and imagination to put into them. So get ready, because it's going to be a great week. If you have any COVID-19 related concerns, please remember that you can continue to call our Colorado COVID-19 hotline, 303-778-1130, extension 219, or email us at assistance@nfbco.org. You can also use those numbers if you're having any trouble with denials of your service animal on Lyft or Uber. So our hotline is now serving a dual purpose. You can call it for COVID-19 related questions or assistance, or for those pesky service dog denials. So again, assistance@nfbco.org, 303-778-1130, extension 219.
And you can also call or email those same coordinates if you'd like to make a significant donation to the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado.
Or even a little donation.
Or even a little donation. Oh, yeah, we're happy. We can send LeBar out to your house to pick it up. It'll be all cool. It'd be great. So also, if you have suggestions for us for these Mountain Time at Fives, guests, if you have a theme, something you'd like us to work on. So Scott and I and all of us are going to talk today. I'm going to give you in a second, Scott. We're going to talk a little about philosophy, the future of blindness, and the future of the National Federation of the Blind. And this isn't going to be a lecture. It's going to be an open mic Friday afternoon. And Scott will make whatever announcements he has and then kind of kick us into this this topic. Scott, you're back unmuted, I do believe.
I sent the request.
Oh, Scott, you need to unmute.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
You're there, buddy.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kevin. And I just want to add a thank you to you for recognizing what is going on, especially in my home state of Minnesota. Last night, I was just riveted to CNN, and I even was tuning into local radio from the Twin Cities, and I just am appalled and shocked and overwhelmed. And I hope that, what we can do in our own little way is lead the world in a better direction and bring understanding to people about people with differences, and try and make this world a more accepting and tolerant place, because we're really struggling with that in many, many ways right now. So thank you for all that, Kevin.
I wanted to just say also, Scott, real quick, our Minnesota president, Ryan Strunk, posted a very nice post on Facebook. And while we're talking here, we should recognize that our Idaho affiliate president, Dana, is with us on Zoom tonight. So it's always good to recognize folks who are brothers and sisters. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, and speaking of Ryan, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the 100-year anniversary of the Minnesota Organization of the Blind, which later became the National Federation of the Blind of Minnesota, Ryan prepared and produced just an awesome audio presentation of the 100 years, and you should listen to that. I'm sure you can find it on their website, NFB of Minnesota. But I guess also, Kevin, I'm sorry, at the beginning I was having some difficulties getting on the call and a lot of commotion going on here at the LeVar House. I take it you want me to kind of kick off this stuff?
Yeah, you and I have been talking about this stuff for years, along with a bunch of other folks, and so we thought we'd kick it around with folks tonight.
Well, absolutely. And I think if you look over the 80-year history of the National Federation of the Blind, one of the things that you will recognize, of course, is there's been tremendous change in how we as blind people interact in society, and how the tools and techniques we use. And I think that pace of change is only accelerating, and it's accelerating because of technology. Technology is dramatically changing our worlds in many ways. One way, of course, is with the medical effects of blindness. I think that over time, you will see less and less blindness in our country. Well, the only thing I guess that might sort of curb that is our population is obviously growing older and older, and we're getting a lot of blindness as a result of the effects of growing older, macular degeneration and all of that. But I think even advancements in medicine will someday curb a lot of that, if not eliminate a lot of the macular degeneration and that kind of stuff. And of course, you also often have blindness due to accidents and those kinds of things. But I think overall, the percentage of people in our country who are blind will continue to shrink.
Sure.
I mean, it's not like we're a huge minority now. I mean, we're a minority of the minorities. And I think that'll continue to change, and I think that will obviously have an impact on who we are. But maybe even more relevant is the effects of technology. With the kinds of artificial vision that are already present in our lives, and how fast all of that will continue to grow, I think it really brings up some interesting questions about what our needs will be and what will we need to be independent, and is it the same as what we need now?
Yeah, and it's interesting today as I contemplated before we open this up and get other people in here, I was making something in the oven. My oven is not accessible. I'm a blind guy. I cook. I have to guess. There's the clicks, or I have to find someone that's sighted. And I'm thinking, we say, maybe there will be no need for the National Federation of the Blind. Well, as long as I can't work my oven, damn it, we're going to continue to make sure there's a need for the National Federation of the Blind. Hopefully in a few years, you'll talk to it. And 20 years after that, it's going to be synced to your brain anyway. So you'll just think it and it'll turn on.
Well, right. But even now, I mean, one solution you could employ if you wanted is to call Ira or Be My Eyes or even FaceTime video a friend and say, hey.
Yeah.
And that's something that we couldn't do, 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Do folks have comments about this? We're just getting it started. If folks have comments about where they think we are as blind people, what are the changes going to be 5, 10 years ago? 10 years from now. 5 years from now. Feel free to dream and speculate with us and give us your thoughts and opinions. Kev, do we have anyone?
Your screen share is stopped. Current unit.
God, I think
Screen share. Audio settings. The video thumbnails are minimized to optimize full screen. Start my video button. Video settings. Drop down button. Audio settings.
Your audio got weird there, Kevin.
Yeah, I think you're sharing your jaws with us.
Somebody else.
I'm not.
Oh, maybe it's
somebody else.
Yeah, it's
Kevin's
somebody
taking them out.
yeah. They can't.
I'm on my iPhone, so I don't have JAWS right now.
Okay, well, whatever. Let's see if anybody has comments.
If you want to raise your hand, if you dialed in, it's *9 under the More section or the Participant section on the phone, and Alt-Y on JAWS.
Yeah. So if you have comments or want to join in this conversation, until we see hand raises, we got a phone number.
Ending in 1892.
1892. It's Goodyear.
All right.
Yeah.
Hi, who's this?
Debbie Brown from Maryland.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello. Yes. I am open up a controversial can of worms here, but I am, or at least my perception is that more of the younger group, and maybe this is kind of how we're doing things or the causes of blindness have changed, I don't know. We seem to have more people who either are or have been, in our young people classified as, you might classify them as low vision, and they are people who have had some sight, and so it's a big deal. They're not so totally blind that, okay, you're blind, there's no question. They've had to fight to get Braille, so that's a really big deal to them. But there's another phenomenon. Those of us, well, maybe that means I'm old, but those of us who don't, they are more in tune with popular culture. Popular culture is becoming more visual, and they seem to be more in tune with it than my generation was kind of, but, that they're really, that kind of makes a difference because it's become so visual that a totally blind person can't make any sense of it. I'm seeing that distinction in some cases, but also those of us who've been totally blind, maybe we're just making excuses, but learning to use a camera and all that stuff and using all of that artificial vision and technology, and even using, Be My Eyes, the people are generally helpful to learn how to deal with a camera and get a picture of something and get it right in your device so you can read it, and you're reeling all those, when you first start using the KNFB reader, I'm tilting this paper all this way and that, really? Thought I knew what straight was, but so that kind of stuff.
I think you're right. There's always generational. There's always generational stuff. There always is. This generation has different needs. My dad didn't understand why I liked the Rolling Stones, and in those days I didn't quite understand why he liked Frank Sinatra. And now, I think we both get each other. So there are going to be generations, and it's not easy for seniors to understand all this technology. So you make a couple of good points. Thank you. Who else do we have, Kev?
Well, and let me just say, I think technology will also sort of fix that.
Yeah.
Debbie, because, even with a free app like Seeing AI, you don't have to be very accurate with the camera for it to pick up an amazing amount of information. I think there will be a time when you'll be able to either use your phone or a set of eyeglasses, wave them around, move them around, and get tons of information from it.
Yeah, my guess is we're 5 years away from pretty significant changes. I remember going to national conventions about a decade ago and hearing some of the dreamy talk from technologists. that within 4 or 5 years, you'd walk into a dentist's office and you'd have a gizmo on your that would tell you, reception desk with a 5'2" woman in blonde hair behind it. We haven't come to that point yet, but I'm going to tell you what, we're getting closer all the time. And you all know this is the case. And I think being able to operate these technologies are going to get, again, most of you guys already have Alexa and all that stuff that you're able to talk to, which I think will handle some of this stuff. Other comments from folks about where you think we are as a people or a community or the National Federation of the Blind. Where are we going? What will be the needs in the next 5 or 10 years?
Phone number 0061.
Hi there.
This is Carol Hale.
Hi there. Go ahead, my friend.
I'm up in Wyoming,
Yeah.
and I truly believe that within the next 10 years, they'll be able to have our eyes repaired where we will be able to see. They have a technology now that by hooking up to your optical nerve that you are able to discern some sight now.
Sure.
But it's
right.
experimental stage.
Right. We had Mike on last week who talked about the fact that he got his sight back in some interesting ways. And where are you in Wyoming? I forget where you are. Sorry, we had a glitch. I was wondering where you are. Eileen is on this call, and Eileen is the secretary of our Wyoming affiliate. So we're going to definitely want to network with you, of course, because we have a pretty active group up there now. She probably knows you, but I'm not sure where you are. Okay. Other comments on this topic?
We've got Denise Avant.
Oh, great. Hi, Denise.
Accept the unmute, Denise.
Another state president. Man, they just keep coming on in here.
Yeah, and a member of the board of directors of the National Association of Blind Lawyers.
Woohoo!
Hey, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So, I think, Kevin, you pointed out for various reasons there will be, blind people in society. And one of the things that the National Federation of the Blind does, and the thing that I'm proud that we do, is to educate the public about blindness.
Yeah.
I have been, we're in this COVID-19 era and social distancing, and people are wondering, what are blind people going to do? Well, we're going to figure out what's needed, and we're going to use our canes and do what we always do and participate in society. And I think that, the NFB was the only organization to really stand up and say, we are not going to be isolated in our homes, content to do everything online or have everybody bring everything to us, because we can do better than that. We can still participate in society despite the social distancing. And even as technology progresses, one of our other key roles is that we advocate, and we will be advocating for accessibility. This phone that I'm holding in my hand, called an iPhone, we fought to have the Apple products be accessible to us. Scott, I'm sure, knows this. That was a battle long ago, but my guess is that as technology advances, we'll have to continue to advocate to make sure that accessibility goes right along with that. So I don't have any doubt that there will be a need for the National Federation of the Blind.
Yeah, I agree with that so much, Denise. Thank you very much. I don't know what that need will be in 15 years. Who knows?
Yeah, because I think we'll fix a lot of the inaccessible technology, and more and more it's becoming a part of the mainstream effort. Now we got a long ways to go, but I do think in 15 years, or certainly within 20, the accessibility battles that we're currently having will largely be a thing of the past.
Yeah, which also means then, in many ways, we'll be even closer to equality. But the fact is, a piece of hardware or software will not necessarily mean that sighted society at large will stop with their myths and misconceptions and their stereotyping. We'll still have a battle to say, look, I can run my own oven and I can help program this and I can set my own TV and I can travel in my automated vehicle and I'm equal and I can participate and I need to be treated with respect. We're still going to have those issues in my view.
Beecham.
Jess?
So I think another important thing, we oftentimes think about all the different battles that we fight and we do, and we have a lot of work to do as an advocacy and civil rights organization. But another really important thing that we are is a group, a sounding board, a support group for one another. And we, no matter what the situation is, unless everybody becomes sighted and no one is blind anymore, we're still going to have to deal with things, attitudes, with things on a day-to-day basis that bring us down, that cause us to need each other just as much as we ever have before. And I think that's where the love, hope, and determination of the National Federation of the Blind will still continue to shine through.
It will. I really want to return to Denise's point a little bit, her first point, and that is, the National Federation of the Blind is going to help us through this pandemic in real ways. How do we get out there and deal with social distancing? I'll tell you what, I haven't been out. I'm a little nervous myself. I'm not afraid to say to my colleagues, and I've been talking to Dan Burke and Julie Deaton and other people who have been out, and I'm like, I am a little concerned about how I'm going to work through stores and around crowds and all that. Yeah, I just think it's going to be crazy. So I need the Federation some of you guys to be the canaries in the coal mine and then show me how to do it, And
it's going to be really fascinating for me. I have not, the last time I traveled was February 17th. And ever since then, I've been home. And when I've gone anywhere, I've gone somewhere with my son or daughter or wife. I mean, I really haven't
distance from those two, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean, I really, and I haven't gone many places because I haven't wanted to. I really have taken seriously what's been going on, and I just wonder what it's going to be like traveling through an airport.
Yeah.
I hope it means that not as many people will feel free to just come up and grab my arm, but it'll be interesting how that. How that dynamic evolves. Will people, say the hell with social distancing? I got to help that poor blind guy.
Yeah, because he's about to go up the down escalator, and he doesn't have sense to figure out a strategy to know that he's going up.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right.
Okay. Other comments from folks just following our discussion? If you want to jump in,
Mark.
Hi, I'm from Maine. I'm from Madawaska, Maine.
Nice. Welcome aboard.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm the treasurer of the NFB of Maine, and I'm glad to be on this call. What I need to say is that technology is a wonderful thing, and it's accelerating big time, and it will help us. But we also need the basic sense that we can operate in the sighted world, that we can operate in society, and if we can, for things like job interviews, for jobs, and if we, the self-esteem has to be there, and the sense that you don't share, or we don't share that idea of low expectations, and being able to show that you're still in a job interview going to have to be kind of ahead of the rest of the pack, for example, in spite of the technology. And some technology has actually closed doors. I've known of companies that have used proprietary technology. And we will continue to have to advocate to make that accessible. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that, and really enjoyed when I was up at y'all's state convention. Had a great time. Thank you. You guys are a really great Federation. Small but mighty family up there, that's for certain. Technology's been a double-edged sword so far, hasn't it? On one hand, you can do these amazing things with an iPhone. On the other hand, you go to a kiosk and you can't buy a ticket independently, or you go to get some food and there's a restaurant and there's a bartender, but he'll sit there and go, I'm sorry, you have to use the iPad. you know, so it's a double-edged sword so far. You're right. Absolutely. Scott, any comment?
He went down for
Next caller. Okay, we'll go to the next.
We've got phone number 4172.
4172. Hi there.
Yeah, this is Bianca. I think that technology is really gonna make things easier for blind people, especially if we have an organization like the NFB, because I know that we advocate toward people making things accessible, and it's a learning process right now, but I think there's gonna be maybe less of that. I'm not saying there's not gonna be any more advocacy going on, but I think it'll be less and less. But I think that blind people will still need to stand up for themselves and tell people, you know what, I can cut things with a knife perfectly all right, or
Yeah.
I
Especially
can
my finger.
program this, you know.
I got you. Absolutely. Right on. I agree. Absolutely. That's wonderful. And we're going to continue to need to advocate for our civil rights. And we're going to have to make sure that this technology is accessible. You know, technology is great if you can afford it, which is, of course, why we need all of us to work on the ATAA, so we can get the tax credit to buy some of this technology. And John Perret was on here early this week, and I imagine you can hear that one on the, is it up on, yeah, that one with John Perret. If you missed it earlier this week, John went through a lot of the stuff that we need to focus on in terms of our governmental affairs advocacy. Other comments?
Dale and Edith, accept the request there.
Oh, yeah, accept the request there, Aurora.
And Scott's back.
Scott's back, and
I'm back.
we're waiting for.
We don't want to listen to Dale anyway. I mean,
Oh yeah. Well, I'd rather hear Dale than Curtis.
All right, who's on? Is that better?
Yes, great. Oh, yeah.
There you guys are.
Yeah. I'd like to buy a hat. Go ahead.
All right. I'm a native of Colorado, and all this technology,
Yeah.
Siri, Alexa, and all those other people don't understand me. And I know.
Sorry, what? I'm sorry. What are you saying, Dale? I'm sorry. I'm taking trouble.
I know there's an accent in Northeast Colorado.
Yeah.
No, the thing I really want to stress is the Federation, in my view, serves a very big part, at least to me, as a personal support group where we can get our own pats on the back if we need them.
There you go.
And I really hope and pray that continues on for years to come.
Yeah, I do too, brother. And also, it's a place that Edith can come and not be embarrassed to bring you. Viviana.
So, you know, I think you're right, Dale. I mean, I think for quite a while into the future that the Federation will continue to play that role, but I wonder how many people will feel the need for that role when, you know, they can get up in the morning, they can access all the news and information they need, they can get their work done remotely or get in their automated vehicle and go to work and you know, go through their day much the same way a sighted person goes through their day now. When we reach that stage, which I really believe we will, then what is our argument to other blind people that they need to be members of the NFB? Right now, we got all kinds of great arguments, right? We've got to fight inaccessible technology. We got to fight the stereotypes. We got to fight the fact that in many places, the state can still go in and take your children away just on the basis of your blindness alone. there are tons of inequities right now, but I think those are going to go away. So what will be our justification in the future? That's what I'd like to get people's thoughts on that.
Jess?
I guess my thought is, if there is no justification, if really as blind people we're equal with sighted people, I don't really see that I would be compelled to compel other blind people to join our organization. Maybe we should just switch gears and advocate for something else.
What's the old
I mean,
yeah, what's the
if
old
it ain't broke, don't fix it.
yeah, what's the old adage about, do you know what happened to the guys that used to make saddles? Right? Well, there's not that many of them around anymore because the car came along.
Right.
And the car pretty much put saddle makers, other than some, out of business. And who knows in 20 years if the
It doesn't mean that's a bad thing.
No, look, my job would be to put us out of business. Let's be equul.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
that means we've been a very effective civil rights organization.
I'll miss you guys. I don't know if I can handle it. I just don't. Not today. Other comment, other thoughts or comments on this whole broad area?
Viviana.
Oh, Viviana.
This is Viviana calling from a very hairy and scary Minneapolis.
Oh, baby.
Where within 1 block of me, there's been a looting and smashing and rioting, and it's pretty scary, just saying.
Well, I don't know if you were on it. We started the top of the call with a moment of silence for pandemic related stuff, as well as what's happening in your city and in other cities tonight. So
it's bad.
Can I just ask Viviana, where do you live in Minneapolis?
Uptown.
You see, when I went to law school there, I lived in Uptown, so I know the area well.
I'm on the Greenway in DuPont, and they smashed up the Cub and the CVS and the Target, and they trashed the Apple Store. Every single thing down Lake Street, all the way from Hennepin to Minnehaha, is trashed.
Wow. Yeah.
And
my grandma, when I was 2, used to threaten to send me to Minnehaha, and it scared me. I didn't even know what that was. Anyway, I digress. Viviana, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, did you at least laugh a little? Get it? Anyway.
And you know, the thing is that, Minnehaha, I get it. So they're having curfew here tonight. I've never been in a city where they've instituted a curfew.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know how old people are on this call, and I'm going to stop, but I was thinking about it today. In 1968, I was at the Arizona School for the Deaf and Blind. I was in the 5th grade when Dr. Martin Luther King got shot, and it was a terrifying 3 or 4 days for the nation, and for little kids. Like, you know, I didn't know what to make of this. He was a great man, and someone shot him, and then everybody started rioting and looting, and it was a hard 3 days for a little 10, 11-year-old kid. So anyway, so we got to think of our kiddos for sure during this time.
So anyway, what I wanted to say on this topic is kind of, you know, piggybacking on what Scott was saying about the youth joining the NFB. And the thing is I think they may be having themselves a little false sense of security. Like, my iPhone works and I can just do whatever anybody who can see can do, because I can just take an Uber and I can just have my groceries delivered, and I can use my iPhone and my MacBook, and you know, Windows narrator's real good now. And so I don't need the NFB, and I don't need any type of movement like that. And I think that they're living with their heads under a rock, because shortly they will, you know, or, you know, on occasion they run into somebody who has their own little preconceived notion about how blind people are so helpless and can't do anything, even if their iPhone works, or maybe the Uber guy doesn't feel like taking them because they have a guide dog, or maybe now they're, with all their fancy schmancy, you know, schmancy technology, they still can't get a job. And gee, I wonder why that is. So I have run across many, many youth who say, I don't need the NFB, and I'm not going to join it, and I don't want to join any of that stuff, and I hate the ACB, and I hate the NFB, and they're all just useless and worthless. And I think somehow there needs to be a way to get it into their millennial little heads, their snowflake little bodies, that they do need somebody. And you know, if it wasn't for some older folks going to the legislatures and stuff, who's going to advocate for them? And who's going to be the one to, you know, help them get their job and listen to their gripes about, you know, whatever, when they figure out what reality is? Can tech?
Ooh. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I got your point. Your point is well taken. I think we have to be real careful. I referred to it earlier, and Scott, you can jump in here, but I referred to it earlier that, you know, my dad didn't like my Rolling Stones, and we have to be real careful. You know, I've done a lot of organizing. Jessica has, Scott has, a lot of us on this call. Dana has, oh my goodness, a lot of us. And we run into this young people issue, and we do. And we know that we're victims of our success. We've made it possible for some blind people to have some good jobs. We've made it possible for all kinds of sporting rec opportunities and access technologies and the iPhone and the NLS and all that. So it is easier, I suppose, for some people to say, you know, I'm just going to hang. I don't need the federation. There's legalized marijuana now, et cetera. But we can't go after them, you know, as though they're bad people. We got to love them into the National Federation today.
Well, and I was wondering if we have any millennials that want to defend millennials, and
yeah, come on,
their snowflake little bodies.
Yeah, because I have a son who is somewhat active over the years, and he contributes to the extent that he wants to. But live the life you want means we've got to get permission for snowflakes to be snowflakes, or join the federation, or do both. We have to love people in the outfit. I love the comment, and I do understand the frustration, because, gosh, I remember when we were working in California for a couple of years, and we would find blind people, and we're like, oh man, we could benefit from you, and you could benefit from us. And they'd say, I get a disability check, and you know, I got my talking book, I'm good. And they felt good. So comments, Millennia Defenders.
We got Eileen.
Eileen.
Hi, everybody. Let me just start by saying, with my children do say that I'm the millennial in the family. But anyway, I just really wanted to say that in my idea of the Federation continuing, if we're so great and we have access to everything, we don't have to fight for our rights, well, then the next step would be to advocate for those groups that need us more.
There you go.
We can advocate for others, and we come up with more charter schools, and we continue the Federation strong and stronger and stronger.
Sweet.
That's my comment.
I love it. Build it up, baby.
Well, and I do think, and a related point, Eileen, is that, you know, we're pretty fortunate here in the United States, and in the first world countries. There's lots of very significant opportunities for blind people. But if you travel to a lot of these least developed and developing countries, things are as bad for blind people there as they were for us in the 1940s. And so there's a tremendous amount of work to be done, not only here still, but in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that my son Nijat left Azerbaijan when he was 11. One, because he wanted eye surgery that didn't work, but two, no opportunity for a blind guy in Azerbaijan. There's a reason that blind folks from Ethiopia want to come here. It's not easy to be blind in other parts of the world.
That's why my wife came here.
Yeah, well, that's right, exactly. And then she saw you, and everything.
She wanted to go back. No.
What else do we have? Do we have other folks want to join in this conversation? Where are these millennial blind defenders?
Lisa Hickson.
Lisa.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Just wanted to agree with the last comment. I think it was Scott who spoke about the work that needs to be done in the less developed countries, because he really spoke to it very well. We are still having a lot of difficulty in these smaller islands, smaller countries. where you were in the US in the 1940s, we're still stuck there
Yeah.
in some instances, and unfortunately. So he spoke to that very, very well.
And we've known, for example, of blind immigrants. I know of a blind immigrant who came here after his family blinded him so that he could beg on the streets.
Oh no.
And these things, you know, that's not an unusual occurrence in some African and other countries. It's, you know, it's a sad thing that we have it so good, and we need to count those blessings for sure. And of those blessings, you know, go ahead.
Take, for example, I live alone. I just bought a house and I live alone in a community, like a government housing community area. And I'm just getting a lot of objections from people who thinks that somebody who is blind should not be living on their own. There's just so much ignorance, so much nonsense that I have to deal with.
Now, aren't you in Montego or somewhere? Where are you?
Antigua, yes, in the Caribbean. Yes.
I'd be glad to come down to the Caribbean and help with this advocacy effort.
Oh wow, you would?
Yeah,
you serious?
Sure. Absolutely.
Are you serious?
let's touch base. Maybe I can get the president of the NFB to send me down there for some advocacy to the Caribbean. That's would be a nice assignment.
Excellent. That would be very, very excellent. Just another question. Where do you see the automated cars? Do you see the technology that being more promoted within the next 5 to 10 years, that more persons who are blind would have access, would be, you know, making use of that technology?
So I'm not any more prescient than anybody else, but I know Scott has some notions. I will say that I was one of the ones fortunate enough in Las Vegas to actually ride in one of the self-driving autonomous vehicles all over the place. And there was a person still behind the wheel, but she didn't touch it. She didn't do anything. She just had to be there by law, because right now in Vegas, they can't drive the autonomous cars. It's good that you mentioned that, because of course, one of the things we're working is to make sure that to the extent that we do deploy autonomous vehicles, national blind people ought to be able to operate them. We don't want someone to say, oh no, you know, even all you're going to do is flip a switch and set a coordinate or whatever the heck it is. You got to have a license, yada, yada. We want to make sure that the auto manufacturers, the technologists, and the legislators and the policymakers make room for blind people. Scott?
I agree. I'd say that in 5 years from now, so in other words, 2025, there will be a significant percentage of the vehicles on the road that are the 4th and 5th generation automated vehicles, which means they're truly autonomous. There's no way that a person can take it over and drive it in the way that cars are driven now. You will see that Uber and Lyft and other companies we've never heard of yet will be out there in force with these vehicles. That's what's going to come get you and pick you up and take you wherever. And you're absolutely right, Kevin, that what we have to do is make sure that we're allowed to own and operate these vehicles. And operate might even be not exactly the right word. But the other thing we've got to make sure is there will be information that those vehicles give you.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that that is accessible, that, you know, if there's a screen there saying you're doing this, you're doing that, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? We have to be able to access that interface.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I don't know exactly. There's so many books and articles and material out there about the autonomous vehicle revolution. We don't know what it's going to look like. It's one of the reasons we've had the discussions on these Mountain Time at 5 calls about the future of employment, because, you know, you've got 2.3 million truck drivers on the road. Now, if autonomous trucks within the next decade can put those guys out of work, that's 2 million people out of work that are going to be clamoring in the same job market we are. So there's all this interesting future contemplation. Other comments, Kev, before we're probably getting close to wrap up, aren't we?
Christopher Walker.
Hey, Chris.
Accept the unmute there.
Don't be a mutant, Chris.
Kevin, it's 5:45, 15 in front of 6.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, Chris.
Chris, you with us?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you. Chris Walker from Virginia on the East Coast side.
Yeah.
So love the Rocky Mountains. But I think the NFB will be around for a good while. I'm a late bloomer into the NFB. I was sighted at one time. About 10 years ago, I lost my sight, and I didn't have all this stuff. I had heard about the NFB, how militant and all these things about the NFB. And at the time, I wasn't really thinking about, I was just trying to figure out how to live as a blind person and how to do things. So I found my chapter here back in 2014. So I came into the Federation and I said, well, let me find out about this organization. And luckily, I've learned a lot joining the organization, going back and reading the history and where they started from back in 1940 to where we are now. I see a lot of changes within the NFB, and I continue to see them even going way before we're probably all going to be gone. But they're going to have issues, I'm sure, into the future that they're going to have to deal with that we probably won't even know about after we're long gone. So, yeah, I think that personally for me, I think the NFB has done great things, and they will strive to, even get further and better.
Well, we appreciate you coming in here, and I appreciate your things that you observed throughout and your work in the Virginia affiliate. Thank you for that. By the way, tell my knucklehead son to, call his dad from time to time. He's there in Arlington. So that's great. I agree with you 100%. Thank you. Who else do we have?
Michael Smith.
Oh, Mike. Hey, Michael.
Hi. Good evening, guys. So I'm going to try, I know Scott or Kev, I know you were asking who's going to defend the millennials here. Yeah. I'm gonna try and be in the middle here. So if I go towards one side, I apologize. If I go towards another, I apologize. But here goes.
Here we go.
So
Kevin, mute this guy. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So here's my thought. First of all, I'm in full agreement that I believe the NFB is going to be around for a very long time, because no matter what comes down the line in the future, blind people in the future are going to need the NFB, and they're going to, and stuff like that. Now, at myself being a millennial, I'm 29 and I'm going to be 30 this year in September. And I will admit that in recent years, and thanks to all the Zoom meetings and stuff, I'm starting to get my faith back in the NFB. But for a number of years, my faith was shaken because of, just like Chris Walker said, I had heard the same thing where the NFB was militant. It was kind of like the blind versus the sighted. But there was another thing too. And when I was 16, I joined the NFB here in Arizona. I joined the NFB, not necessarily how to learn how to deal with blindness, but because there was a girl I was interested. I'm sorry to admit that. But
that's a good reason to join.
But I went to an NFB gathering, just a gathering, and I remember back in 2006, I was 16, and I remember that Congress was talking about possibly putting Braille on money and on a regular dollar bill and stuff like that. And I remember I got really excited about that, because it was like, oh man, that's cool. Braille on money, it's like, how cool would that be? And I remember I spoke this at the gathering, and I remember I said it, and I was like, isn't that cool? And they're going, oh yeah, kind of like nonchalantly. And I said, but I heard there was a group that was going against that and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, that's the NFB. And they're like, welcome to the resistance. And it's not that, I mean, first I was like, oh man, I felt embarrassed, because I was like, oh man, there was my one chance to be the cool kid. But then again, it was like, I also kind of felt too that it was like, okay, I understand the difference of opinion, sure. But since what we're talking about is advances and stuff like that, why not? What's the problem? Yeah. And then of course somebody explained it, well, because the material that they make money on, it would be too soft, and the Braille probably wouldn't look right or something like that. But it's kind of since then that my faith in NFB, just for certain reasons, was shaken a little bit. And I think when it's, of course, there is that, you know, of course, being amongst you guys right here and stuff, I can see where the NFB, it's like, hey, these are some good people and stuff like that. But to another blind person on the street who maybe has never heard of NFB, or they have heard of it and they choose not to join, it's only because the image of the NFB is put out there. Well, it's like, well, the NFB is the NFB is sure it's inviting, but they think it's like a recruitment thing. And in this day and age, nobody wants it. I hope I'm making sense. They would feel like, why am I being recruited?
Yeah,
I wish
I think you're making two or three what I consider to be valid points, and I thank you for being willing to make them. The whole Braille money thing, Scott might want to jump in a little bit. You know, did we jump on the wrong side of that issue quickly? Did we not? I don't know. We do know that the process to put Braille on money that wouldn't last very long anyway would have cost, you know, billions. And it just seemed like other technology would be a better use of our time as a community of people. Are we sometimes militant? Damn right we are. We aren't as much as we used to. We use different procedures, different processes. We haven't picketed anywhere in a while. Doesn't mean I wouldn't hit the picket line if we were being in a situation where it was necessary. There was times years ago we had to be militant. If Dr. Jernigan and Dr. Maurer hadn't have been militant, we would not be where we are. And I know some blind people say, well, they're too militant. I used to say that. Sometimes that really means I don't want to be embarrassed about my blindness to stand up with a lot of blind people and say, step back, Jack. There's all kinds of reasons. And I do understand that you feel that the millennial crowd may not want to be recruited, but I think there's some, you know, churches have this issue, Lions clubs, civic organizations. And I think as long as we can love people into the movement, those who like it will grab onto it with us. Those who it's not their cup of tea will not have a cup of coffee with us. You know, Scott?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about millennials is it's true that as a generalization, millennials are not as likely to join organizations as previous generations. So that's an interesting social dynamic, and I think we do see some of that in blind millennials. In terms of the Braille, Braille on money issue, it was a very complicated issue, and we actually never said that we opposed that it would happen. What we were arguing about is the level of priority it should occupy.
Yeah.
And what ultimately happened with that whole case and all of that is the Treasury is eventually going to make tactile indications on our money. It'll occur as they go through the next major reissuance of currency and redesign of currency. Meanwhile, there's a lot of technology out there, and it's still the case, I do believe, that you can get from the Department of Treasury a bill reader.
Yep, you can. You can
and
get
what's good? What's that?
You can get the iBill, yes.
Right. And what's really cool about technology now, it really does work very fast. I mean, even if you're using a free app like Seeing AI, you can instantly find out what bills are.
And the fact is, Robert, again, I don't agree with everything that this organization does. And I've always said, if I can agree with 80 or 85%, but it's a strong 80, 85%. It's a civil rights movement that is as strong and powerful and loving as any civil rights movement in history. And so am I going to disagree with President Riccobono on something or other? Probably not publicly, because he's my guy. I voted for him. I want him to be the president. But privately, I'll take his head off, man. Comments, questions,
Sheila.
Observations?
Sheila Leegland.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi there. How are you?
Excellent.
I have a comment, kind of more about our perception of ourselves as blind people.
Okay.
When I first really became active in the Federation of the Blind, one of the main reasons I did was that I felt that there was too much of a hierarchy of blindness. I saw a lot of partially blind, for the lack of a better word, to kind of put themselves a little bit above us, about those of us who were totally blind.
Okay.
And I felt that we needed a place to belong where there wasn't such a hierarchy. I think there are always going to be some attitudinal barriers with sighted folks. And what I'm thinking of, especially, well, not especially, but one of the areas that comes to my mind is in the religious aspect of our lives, because I can't even tell you, Matt, how many people have come to me and wanted to know if they could pray over me.
Sure.
Because it's not that they're caring about my daily life. The only thing that they're, well, many times, strangers especially,
Yeah.
the one thing that pops up with strangers is they think I need healing. And the simple fact is I don't.
Right. Right.
And I don't like being a part of a group that needs to feel like it has to be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to belong to an organization that does not necessarily, I understand why people, especially who have lost their vision, they're waiting for the transplants and they're waiting for all this stuff. I'm not waiting for that.
Sure.
Because I don't need it and I don't necessarily want it. I'm an RLF, you know what RLF was.
Yeah.
right?
Go ahead. What is it? Tell us. Tell us.
That's me.
What
And the
is it?
simple fact is, if I'm RLF,
Right.
if I was able to see tomorrow because of that optic nerve not working, I don't know if I'd be able to see anyway. Not enough to use it.
Well, thank you for that comment. I would say if you want to, this whole hierarchy of sight thing is a whole another, whole nother ball of wax, I guess. I think one of the greatest conversations I've heard about it is Kathy Jackson does a banquet address. I don't know if she's written it, but it talks about her as a partial. Jessica and I have had conversations around the whole hierarchy of sight. You know, it doesn't help when, if you're partially sighted and you're a little kid and everybody around you says, hey, take Kevin over here, take Kevin over here, bring Kevin this, and they start piling on this responsibility. So it's a whole another topic. It's fascinating.
It is. And I just got to say, Kevin, I continue to pray over you, but it's not because you're blind.
What would you like to delineate further? Why? Because I'm a heathen? Yeah. We have many of our Colorado Springs chapter would agree with you. Let me also recommend one other piece before we move. We're about to wrap up here, I know. But I would also recommend the banquet address that Dr. Maurer gave, where he talks about, I am not a broken-sighted person.
That's a great one.
That's a great speech, and I cannot remember which one, but I don't think it was titled that, by the way. But I'll tell you what, I'll research it and we'll post it up here next week. But it's a wonderful speech for people who talk about, would I want my sight back and what difference does it make? What's our time here, Scott? It's what?
I think it's the top of the hour.
Oh, it's 6 o'clock. We just found out. Do we have anybody in waiting that hasn't been in account? Mary Ann is batting.
Sorry, it is my cuckoo clock, and my phone was not near me, otherwise I would have muted it.
You're good. Go ahead. You're a good place to help finish it off, because I know you have some thoughts on all this, Mary Ann.
Oh, absolutely. I've been thinking on this pretty much. We're letting it run through my mind for the day. Peer support is always going to be something that we offer as the NFB, because there are always going to be people who are newly blinded, and especially as seniors become blind, anybody who didn't grow up with an iPhone in their hand or hasn't had one in their hand for the last little while is still not super comfortable with all of the mainstream new great accessible technology. So there's always going to be at least for a good chunk of time, there's going to be that barrier that we help to climb for people. I think we are also always going to be around to change attitudes, because no matter how great our technology is, it doesn't mean we're going to get that job that we want. And if we do get that job, it doesn't mean that we're going to get the promotion we need, because that's also going to be something, things, and I remember you asked in the questions today, what should the NFB be doing in the next 15, 20 years? And I have a few thoughts that way. One of the things is, and we are already doing it, but I think we need to get even more involved, is that we need to have a really huge hand in the technology that we end up using. Where we partnered with IRA, we've partnered with Kurzweil, we're working on autonomous vehicles and such, but I think we definitely will, as an organization, are going to have to stay on the pulse of the technology that we use. And frankly, if we have our hands in it, in the making of it, we're also going to have our financial hand in it, and that's going to help the organization.
Yeah.
I think we are always going to still need to advocate for the fact that there are still a lot of places in this country, and definitely throughout the world, where technology is specifically geared to the sighted. I don't believe that in 20 years, I would love it if Scott's right and I'm wrong, that in 20 years, we're not going to have inaccessible most of anything. Because frankly, there are lots of places that don't see any need to change.
Right.
Because their incidence of blindness in their core places is so low, right, that they don't see that blind people could be doing that job or that thing, or wanting to go use the U-scan at the grocery store or other kinds of places. I mean, there's all these talk about future technologies where things are going to be completely automated and so on and so forth. Well, I'm not going to go use the U-scan. It's not that accessible. Yeah, it talks to me, right, but it's not going to help me find a barcode.
I got you.
And so on.
There's a lot of work, as you're indicating, cut out for us. I do hope that folks enjoy the Memorial Day weekend. I do hope folks will go and register for the NFB convention. Might as well do that weekend. I hope some folks might check out the Breaking Blind podcast if you want to know stuff about travel. That'd be a fun thing to do this weekend. And when you talk about our young people, I urge us all, you'll be inspired. Go check out the NABS Plus, I think it's called, podcast. NABS Now podcast. And I urge you will be so proud of these young people who have put this together. Scott, did you have any final thoughts?
No, have a great weekend. Enjoy, at least up here in the metro area, we have a nice thunderstorm going, so enjoy the rain.
We need the rain, baby. We need the rain to wash my soul, because it's been dark lately. So let's do that. Thanks, fellow Federationists. God bless you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.